And at the time, I suppose everybody felt this was a totally mad project.
This, I thought, well, people are going to love it or hate it.
I was crapping myself. I thought I was, here I am with the big boys, you know, and with no acting experience whatsoever. And my ex-wife had already filled me with dread before I arrived, before I left that morning for the interview, when she turned around and said to me, "Why are you going to do this?" And I turned around and said, "Well, you know, they've offered me, you know, a chance to go and read it, but you can't act. And you're not that funny."
I first read the script. I'd worked with Robin Doug on Three of a Kind and other shows on Carrots Lib and so on. And they said they got this brilliant sitcom that they wanted me to read, and it was called Lance Blood Newshound, I think, something like that. Lance Somebody Newshound. And I didn't really like it very much. It wasn't very good. And it was about a kind of Mike Hammer type thing.
And everyone who read it said it's too long. They never said it was funny or it wasn't funny. They just said it was too long. And we sent this script to Paul, and we said, "Paul, every time we send this script, everyone says it's too long. You know, can you tell us whether you think it's funny or not?" And he went, "Sure," and he read it, and he said, "This script is too long." And so there was never any conversation about whether it was any good or not, although you could tell he didn't like it very much.
Anyway, I gave them some notes on why I didn't like it, and they said, "We'll go away and rewrite it." And then they phoned me up and said, "What do you think about a sci-fi?" And I said, "I thought we were doing Lance Hammer," or whatever his name was. And they said, no, we think we've got this better idea, we want to do. And I said, don't guys, honestly, don't write a sci-fi sitcom, because nobody ever buys sci-fi sitcoms, you know. I mean, it's like, you don't know the rules in this business, and one of them is don't do sci-fi sitcoms. So they said, "Well, it's not a sci-fi, just read it."
Manchester had been given the opportunity to do a sitcom. And then, like now, in BBC terms, there are very few sitcoms produced outside the London area. And I'd read dozens of sitcoms, and they were all Middle England, middle-aged, middle of the road.
You had the right on Red Wedge sort of Saturday Night Live, Ben Elton, Rick and Aid sort of thing. The young ones had just happened as well. But they were still making things like Terry and June as well.
And the one thing Manchester could not possibly do was produce an average middle-of-the-road comedy. It had to be dangerous, it had to be risky, it had to be innovative, all those things. Otherwise, we were dead.
The truth is, do you know the story about why he bought it? What had happened was, I had gone up to Manchester the previous year to do a Ben Elton script, which was a show called Happy Families, which was a six-parter where Jennifer Saunders played 6 or 7 different characters, kind of kind hearts and coronets type thing. And the way the BBC worked at that time, and it was, you know, everybody knows this, you were here at the time, you know, the way the BBC worked at the time, you did a series and then the budget for the next year got allocated. So you did the Two Ronnies 7 and then they allocated the same budget for Two Ronnies 8. And you did Happy Families 1, so they would write into their budgets for next year Happy Families 2. And everybody knew there wasn't going to be Happy Families 2, but it was, well, that'll corral us off some money for a sitcom. Very usefully as it happened, because Happy Families was shot entirely on film and therefore was a little bit more expensive than your average sitcom, so it was actually quite a nice budget. And it became apparent, Peter Scott and I had known for some time, but it became too blatant for us to conceal it much longer that there wasn't going to be a Happy Families 2. So we had this Paul Jackson slot as it was written into Manchester. So when I read this script, I said to them, well, it's still not going to sell, but there is just this slight little chance, because there's 6 half-hours sitting up in Manchester funded with nothing in them at the moment. I'll take it to Peter Scott.
So I got on the train one day, and it was my favourite place for reading scripts on the trips to London. And the usual 5 scripts had been given me by the office. And I asked the secretary, I said, what are these all about? And she said, oh, the usual thing. Except there's one at the top there called Red Dwarf. I said, what's that about? She said, I'd probably better not say, just read it. And so I got on the train and I read the 4 others, and they were sent back at Euston. And as a treat, I read this different one, Red Dwarf. And I think I'd only got as far as page 2 when I let out a laugh on the train that could be heard at Carlisle. It was a line of the Cats, actually, I remember it now.
Hey, this has been a good day. I've eaten 5 times, I've slept 6 times, and I've made a lot of things mine. Tomorrow, I'm gonna see if I can have sex with something. Ow, yeah!
But that was the start. Red Dwarf, yes, it was a science fiction comedy, but it was a comedy first off. Most importantly, it had got a good pedigree with Grant and Naylor, who'd worked in Manchester because they were writers in residence with BBC Radio in Manchester.
But I just point out that Red Dwarf got made because Happy Families 2 had been written into an annual budget when it never existed.
Fantastic, this is what I always dreamed of. I'm in heaven!
Paul Jackson, who'd given me the script, and incidentally said, yes, I'd said it is a bit well worn, Paul. I mean, how many people have seen this? He said, oh, it's been around, it's been around.
The script really only went to the BBC 3 times, but it's the same script went around. But he didn't go, all over the world to every production company in the world. He just kept going back to the BBC.
Certainly everybody in Manchester, and certainly everybody in London, BBC, thought we were out of our heads.
Dog attack!
So the casting was me, Robin Doug, Peter Ridsdale-Scott, who was the commissioning editor out of Manchester, and Ed Bye, who was going to direct the series. And we saw a really significant number of people. I mean, we saw lots and lots of people.
We had a week where we saw quite a lot of people, and then Paul got pretty bored and said, choose someone or die. I think he had business meetings he needed to go to, and I think quite rightly he sensed that I'd have been probably still there now going, just let's say a few more people.
I was doing Saturday Night Live with Paul Jackson, and Paul was the producer of it, and he had this script and sent me the script to read the part of the cat, simply to see if I thought the part of the cat was racist, because they were worried about this, really sharp sort of black guy. It was like, remember, this was in the politically correct 80s, as it were, So I read the part and said, oh, no, it's not racist, it's really funny. How about letting me read for the part of Lister? And the guys hadn't thought about that at all, and they weren't that keen.
We saw a lot of people. We saw Alan Rickman, who really liked the script, said it was the best script he'd received within, I think it was 2-3 months. And he wanted to play Lister. And we saw, Hugh Laurie. There was a whole bunch of people we saw. And I'd seen a bit of Craig Charles on Saturday Night Live, just channel hopping. And he was, Mr. Angry, right-on poet doing, angry stuff. And it was just, I instantly made my mind up about him, which is, no, I don't like you, and switched to something else. Then Paul said, hey, I've got this Craig Charles guy coming in, and I just honestly didn't think he had a prayer, because he was so unlike the Lister that we were looking for, and he was also not likeable as far as I was concerned. He didn't have a likeable persona. And then when I met him, he was a completely different guy to this kind of angry poet guy. And it was a real problem. He did the best reading by a mile. We were told he had never acted before, which was like, so already it's a gamble. And then he came back because we were really sure he hasn't really acted, let's get him in again. And then his second reading was really bad.
I read that one really, really badly, so I thought, oh God, I'm not going to get this,
But by then we liked him so much, we were going, doesn't matter, he's never acted before. It doesn't. We like him. We want Craig. We want Craig to be Lister. And also, we could see that there was a great double act with Craig and Chris.
And Paul Jackson came out and said, "You've got the gig."
The fact is, Craig is Lister, which I hadn't thought of when I sent him the script.
I don't think I've been typecast as Lister, but people associate me very much with being sort of Dave Lister, a curry-loving slob.
The original Lister was going to be someone quite different from the Lister we have now. He was based on, our ideal Lister was someone like Christopher Lloyd, who was in Taxi, the American sitcom Taxi, and was also the professor in Back to the Future. It was someone like that, or it was someone like the kind of spaced out American stand-up Steve Wright. And we certainly didn't see a Scouser, and we certainly didn't. Our take on it was he was going to be his brain was fried, he was slightly deranged, and all the curry, lager, Lister, was totally not there then.
I see the characters of Rimmer, Lister, Cat and Crichton now as kind of caricatures of the people that play them. So the people that play them kind of blown up, kind of caricatured, like you take your idiosyncrasies and you expand on them a bit more, do you know what I mean? Because Robert's got the middle class guilt, and that Crichton has, and I know Chris is going to thank me for saying this, but there's parts of Chris that are very, very Rimmer, you know. I mean, it's, you know, his collecting of cars and sort of his spotting of trains and things like this.
Poppycock.
I was very much Jack the Lad. Although I don't eat curry, you know, and I don't drink lager. I mean, you know, I drink vodka. I don't drink, you know, pints of lager. I mean, I don't go out and have Indians and, you know, curries and things like that, which people assume I do, but I really, really don't.
Oh yeah, originally, did you know I went up for Rimmer? Did you know that? Well, I did. I went up for Rimmer, and Peter Hugo Daly is an actor. I don't know if you know him. He's a really good actor. He was Lister. He read Lister with me, and we did that. We did the thing in the episode at the end. We did that, and it didn't really work out because otherwise I'd have got the job.
I think my earliest memory of Red Dwarf was in a hotel room, I think near Broadcasting House, auditioning for... I think I auditioned for Lister, actually, and Rimmer, possibly at the time.
I was also very intimidated about working with Chris, because I just thought Chris was so much funnier than I was.
And Chris just came in and did an audition, and he really made it his own. He just got this point. I mean, you know, Chris comes from a background where he knows those kind of very public school, uptight, officer class. He comes from a military family. You know, he knew what the type was.
And that was... I think soon after that we got a letter saying, we don't want you for this, we've employed someone else.
Paul brought Fred Molina in. He did a very good reading. So he got the part there and then. Chris got his rejection letter.
And I thought, right, bye-bye to that one.
Then we realised that who's going to play Lister? We hadn't a clue, and it just wasn't working. I don't think Fred's head was completely round. He wanted to know how long he would be a hologram and would he be turning back into a human. I don't think he was quite happy with the hologram thing. Anyway, and we thought, this isn't right, we need to rethink, and that's when we said, let's get Chris back and let's try him with Craig.
Yeah, well, I suppose one thing I did cling on to a bit was the fact that here was a relationship with Lister, which reminded me very much, right from the first, even the pre-audition reading of the script that I did, of like two brothers at school. That kind of bickering, that kind of I'm going to do better than you sort of thing, or two best mates at school, you know? And it did remind me very much of my relationship at boarding school with sometimes my brother and sometimes, you know, my best mate.
Danny just walked it. I mean, you know, we had a lot of people in for the cat. Obviously the cat, you cast specifically for the cat.
The first lines were, ow, ooh, ee-ah, ooh, how am I looking?
How am I looking?
But there's no one else there. Who's he talking to?
Oh, it's my shadow.
Anyway, I went to the audition and I just went hell for leather. I put on my dad's old wedding suit, which was a big old baggy zoot suit, and, you know, greased my hair back and got into the audition half an hour late.
Danny turned up, he was half an hour late, and he just didn't care. And so it was so gloriously, fantastically, as you would imagine the cat to be. Rob and I just howled with laughter, and it was, you know, he was the first guy we saw, and we knew right there and then he was going to be the cat.
But I didn't know I was late. So, of course, I walked in nonchalant, you know, head of the BBC Northwest, Doug, Rob, Paul Jackson, all sitting there, and I'm sort of ignoring the fact that I'm half an hour late. Sort of going, yeah, well, you know, come on then, should we start, kind of thing.
And he just made it his own. I mean, he's got the physical movement. He was a dancer when I first knew him. In fact, he was a dancer and singer. So he's got a wonderful body movement, and that character has to be lithe and panther-like almost.
I was the first in, and Doug said later on that, you know, we had to sit there all day auditioning people knowing that we wanted you.
So it was Holly. I think I got a phone call a couple of days later, said, will you come and read for the Holly thing? And it was a voiceover, and I went along and read for it, and it worked out really well. They were all laughing.
What about Christine Kachansky? You could have brought Christine back.
In your entire life, your shared conversations with her totalled 173 words.
So?
In terms of wordage, you actually had a better relationship with your rubber plant.
And no Rimmer!
He's the person you knew best, over 14 million words in all.
Holly, 7 million of those were me telling them to smeg off. And the other 7 million were him putting me on reports for telling them to smeg off.
I wasn't happy about it because I was on TV as a voiceover and I wasn't happy with that. I wanted to be seen. I was a bit of a pain in the backside in those days, and but it paid off, because in the end I said, look, let's see me, and I had an idea of how to do it.
Thanks to compound interest, you now own 98% of all the world's wealth. And because you hoarded it for 3 million years, nobody's got any money except for you and Norweb.
Why Norweb?
You left a light on in the bathroom. Got a final demand here for £180 billion.
£180 billion? You're kidding?
April Fool.
Sometimes it's worth moaning about things to get your own way occasionally, and boy did I moan.
The moaning, the constant moaning. He could get a gold medal in the Commonwealth Games, definitely. I don't know about the Olympics, he'd come in with a silver or a bronze, but Commonwealth, gold medal moaner. I'm serious.
The worries were legion. First of all, we had the strike, which meant that every single episode of Red Dwarf for that first series went into production, into rehearsal, and never went into the studio. All 6 of them, rehearsed up to pitch, whatever. So we'd spent all the money. And the BBC said, well, sorry about this, and it's been very good, and we're sure it would have been a success, but that's it. And Paul and I said, oh no, we may have spent the money, but we must remount this production, we must get it on. And we persuaded them, and it was put on.
I think the trouble with sci-fi is it's perceived as being a minority market, and it's actually bigger now than it was, 12 years ago when we started this. This was before, I can't remember if it was literally before the Alien films. I think the first Alien film might have just been around at the time.
A lot of TV executives at the time were kind of really science fiction illiterate. They weren't aware, really, of how much science fiction was going on. The Alien movies, the Star Trek, the Star Wars, Back to the Futures, E.T.s, Close Encounters. There's a whole bunch of this stuff. And when we went in with the original idea, it was like we'd come up with this real obscure kind of genre that only we knew about and no one else in the entire world had heard of.
A lot hung on Red Dwarf being a success.
I filmed a lot of Red Dwarf with a hangover.
It was a first for Manchester. And a lot of the future of, if you like, the entertainment department rested on Red Dwarf being a success.
Danny can be so annoying when you've got a hangover, because he's up, he's like, yeah, he's talking, and it's like, hey, do you know what I did last night, guy? You know what I mean? And he was out with me. He was out with me, and I'm looking at him going, why are you like this? Why? I feel as though someone's just opened up my head and shat in it.
Of course, if it hadn't have been a success, we were all in deep trouble.
Even Chris had a hangover sometimes on it, do you know what I mean? Because we'd all go out, because when we were filming it in Manchester, bad move. It's like, bad move. You take us all from our homes, stick us in a hotel, with a free bar. Come on!
But really, on a tiny sitcom budget, for the first couple of series, they created this extraordinary dark star, alien, tugboat of the universe kind of, that's what it was. It was a grutty, dirty old cargo ship, and I really think they brought that to life.
We had colour television since, 1969 or something, or whatever, and yet that seemed to be not even black and white, it seemed to be sort of grey, that first series when we saw it.
You touch that guitar, Lister, I'll remove the E string and garrote you with it.
But now it's remembered with great affection, really, those times.
I just really love to know where the money was spent. It wasn't spent on the writers, and I can't believe it was spent on the set or the dressing. It wasn't spent on the cast, I don't think. So I think maybe the money was spent on building a Red Dwarf and doing those 12 flybys, and maybe building 2 scutters. Maybe.
We also had to work very hard on the internal reaction of the BBC, because a lot of doubts over this. Why is it being done in Manchester? Why are you doing it anyway?
We've never been a trendy show in a way, We've never sort of been that accepted by sort of comedy officialdom, as it were, We've always been these sort of scallies, tied on at the end, We've never sort of broken into the mainstream of sort of of the comedy mafia, as it were, so, which is great by us.
I actually looked at it and thought, because it was quite a distance between making it and watching it, and I looked at it and thought, my goodness me, that this is weird. I sort of half don't remember doing that. And this is like crazy stuff. This is incredible stuff.
What do you mean? How did I do what?
Lister, don't be a gimboid.
I'm not being a gimboid.
I've just been in the library thinking, and I've decided... Shut up! As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, I've decided when you go into stasis, I want to stay behind. I want to be left on.
What, on your own for the rest of your life?
What things?
And the first creaky Red Dwarf had gone out, I think, on a Tuesday. And my boss had said, don't go down tomorrow to program review. They won't talk about it really. It's the first one. They'll leave it alone. It's next week the battle will begin. You go. I said, all right. So there I was on the Wednesday morning, down to program review, worrying what I was going to say, how we're going to explain what we're trying to do, what we hope to achieve, all those things. And halfway through the journey, I thought, oh, forget this, I'm getting nowhere. And got out the paper. I was reading the Times. And in those days, on the back page of the Times, I got to the back page, the Times printed the ratings. And I'd completely forgotten that they did that. I'd completely forgotten about ratings, really. And I looked through BBC One. Then I looked at BBC Two. And there it was. Red Dwarf, number 2, 4.75 million. We got the ratings and we got the audience. And I just went to the buffet and got a brandy and thought, doesn't matter, we'd done it.
I think in Series 1, throughout the making of it, I know even during the making of Series 1, there was we could feel an audience. Some people were really latching onto it. But I think it was really Series 2. I think the scene, if I can be so specific, the episode was Crichton, and it was when we went in to meet the two lovelies, you know.
They are dead. They're all dead. My God. Well, I was only away 2 minutes.
They've been dead for centuries.
No. Yes. You a doctor?
You've only got to look at them. They've got less meat on them than a chicken nugget.
And I think just the length of laughs that we had in that scene made you realise that there's an order, you know, that the people who do like this show really do love it, you know, and we've probably got a cult hit on our hands sort of thing.
I travel the world and I'm recognised all over the world, which is really quite weird. You know, I'm walking down Broadway, going to a liquor store on the corner of 71st and West End in New York, and I go in. I was going to buy a bottle of tequila. I was going to this do. So I walks into the liquor store, and the guy just looks at me like that, he nearly faints. Goes, gets me around the back of the counter into the back room, and there's him and 5 of his mates all sitting watching Red Dwarf on the telly, and they're all...
Well, it's very difficult to stand on a railway platform now without at least one person saying, "Oi, smeghead!"
And of course, there are people who are blatantly honest and come up and say, "That show's crap you're in, you know. What is it about? You know, that Spock thing. You play a Dracula, don't you?" You know, they've got it all wrong. They haven't. You can obviously they haven't really studied the show, you know, because they call me everything but a cat.
I was waiting for a train, and a big skinhead, huge. It was a hot summer's night. Huge tattoos everywhere. Huge bloke with his girlfriend and another bloke drinking lager, and I was sitting on the opposite side on the other platform. Thank goodness, I thought. And he spotted me, and he climbed down on the platform, walked across the 2 lines, and said, "Great to meet you. Great to meet you, mate." I said, "Yeah, good. Here comes my train."
Once you attract a dedicated following, they'll stay with you as long as you keep the standard up, and Rob and Doug have been meticulous about keeping the standard up. So I think you've got the best of both worlds. You've got a very good, structurally sound comedy with this added twist that once the audience had found it, once the specialist, if you like, Trekkie-type audience had found it, the dwarfy audience grew, you've got a very successful motor there. People want more and more and more. They want more than you could ever possibly give them, to be honest.
There's a little postscript to that. As I walk through the door of Programme Review, just down this corridor, they're all going in, and you're getting a few sidelong glances as he's the one. That's right, you know. What about that? And a senior executive from youth programs was walking alongside me in a fairly grumpy mood. Just as we went through the door, he said, "I wish we'd done Red Dwarf." And I thought, we got it. Done.